Hello, my name is Tendai Manombo, and this is Real Talk. The Zimbabwe Schools Examination Council, popularly known as ZIMSEC, recently announced the examination registration fees for grades 6 and 7, O and A levels, pegged in United States dollars and payable in Zim Dollars at the prevailing interbank rate between the 22nd and the 29th of July. This has caused quite a stir as the bulk of the Zimbabwean population is salaried in Zim Dollars. Joining us today is Nicky Dlamini, the Public Relations Manager at ZIMSEC for the past 8 years. She holds a BA in Media Studies, which she attained at the Zimbabwe Open University, and is currently studying towards a Master's in Strategic Communication with the Midlands State University. Now, Nicky was unable to join us in our studio, but she has very graciously agreed to have a Zoom interview. Please stay tuned and enjoy today's episode. Thank you so much for your time, Nicky. I know you're really busy with this new timetable, and I really appreciate you giving us this time of day.
Thank you, Tendai. Thank you for inviting me onto the show.
Okay, for starters, all right, I just want to understand what the role and mandate of ZIMSEC is, particularly in relation to the promotion and protection of the right of children to education. Sorry, you're muted. I can't hear you. You're muted.
I beg your pardon. Sorry. As the Zimbabwe School Examinations Council, we are an examination board that provides assessment. We're an assessment board that administers examinations at grade 7, ordinary level, and advanced level. So I think the trajectory of the nation, of the government of Zimbabwe, has been to eventually provide free education for all children as a way of making sure that the right of the child to education is kept up. And so as ZIMSEC, we are moving towards such a thing, working together closely with the government, notwithstanding the costs that are involved with that.
Okay, speaking of costs, is ZIMSEC a profit-making institution?
No, we are not. We are not a profit-making institution. We are a parastatal. Okay, so we are parastatal under the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education. We have been running autonomously for many years. However, with the onset of the 55% subsidy that the government now brought on board, you will find that now we have got that subsidy coming in from the government, which means we are not completely running autonomously as per se.
Okay, that's all right. I just need a little bit more clarity on that. Please elaborate the recently announced cost structure for O and A level examinations.
Okay, you want to find out just for the O and A level. So, okay, so
Let's
like
go,
I said,
please.
that there is a 55%, yeah, there is a 55% subsidy that the government is paying. Now, this is not a new thing, Tendai. It's something that was introduced, I believe, in 2018. That is when the subsidy actually came into effect, when the government stepped in to subsidize 55%. So this year, for the first time since moving from the multi-currency system back to Zimbabwe dollar, we have announced examination fees pegged at US dollars, however, payable in Zimbabwe dollars. So I will say the fees in US dollars, that is for O level, it is $11 per subject. That is for candidates who are writing in public schools and local council schools, as well as not-for-profit mission schools. Those who are in private schools, private colleges, and private candidates will pay the full fees of $24 per subject.
This is O-level.
Advanced level, the subsidized, yes, that's O-level. The subsidized fee at A-level is $22 per subject. That's for public schools, non-for-profit mission schools, as well as the local council schools. And those who are in private colleges, private candidates, and private schools will pay $48 per subject. Like I said, this is a fee that is gazetted in US dollars. However, it is paid strictly in Zimbabwe dollars.
Oh, strictly in Zimbabwe dollars. At the rate of the day, the interbank rate, or which rate are people going to be using?
Okay, so we are using the interbank rate, and what we have done so that there is equality, or rather there's a standardization of the fees, is we have said that the rate that shall be used for payment is the interbank rate, not the auction rate, the interbank rate of the 22nd of July. And so the payments will be made between the 22nd of July and the 29th of July. It's a 7-day window that to make payments, of which that rate as of the 22nd of July will be kept stable.
You will hold it, you'll freeze it for that period.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. Do you mind telling us what goes into the specific cost of each examination?
Wow. Okay. So our examinations work in a cycle. We call it an examination cycle. So I will start, maybe let me just use one examination for example, so that you can understand. So we have the grade 7 examination. The grade 7 examination, we will start with, there is what is called item writing. Item writing is basically what we would call in our language setting of papers, but they don't set papers, they set what we call item, which is questions. Now there are people who are brought in on a contract to set those items.
And these are committees that are put together.
Give me just a second for that. Yes, this is a committee of people who are outside of ZIMSEC, I beg your pardon, who are then put together to come and set those items.
All right.
And then after the items are set, we then have processes that go into there, but it involves a lot of people who are contracted to come through until we have produced what we call the question paper. And then once we have the question paper,
so this is the printing and the transportation and things like that.
We haven't gotten there yet. After the question paper, we now go into the printing. We now go into the printing.
Oh, so not the physical paper, but the questions have been collated.
Yes.
Okay.
So there's a lot of stuff. And then once that is done, we then package the question paper, and then we distribute it across the country to cluster points and to centers that are standalone centers. Throughout the process of the administration of the examination, we do have teams that will go out to then be able to do spot checks. This is part of our security measures. We also have the security of the examination. So we do have people that are employed during the examination period, I beg your pardon. So such as cluster managers. We have the ZRP that we hire for high security or red flag areas that are not secure. We do have courier vehicles that we do have the safe vehicles in order to be able to transport the papers safely. Once that is done, we then go back and collect the scripts that have been written and bring them back for further distribution to marking venues. Then we distribute to marking venues, and then we have examiners. These are contracted to come and mark the papers. And so they stay open for a period of time. And then once that is done, we then give out the results. So you'll find there's now the result slips, after which then we must print examination certificates.
Okay.
So that's the entire cycle that is funded solely by examination fees.
I didn't hear you mention the invigilators, though.
Really? Invigilators are not on the payroll of ZIMSEC. This is a conversation that has been going on for many years between the teachers' unions, Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education, and ZIMSEC.
Yes.
And the ministry did say in a meeting that we had in 2019, it was a roundtable meeting with everybody involved. And they did mention that invigilators were teachers that are working at their stations. Therefore, they are still under their employer, the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education. Therefore, if any payments were to be made, they were to be made from that aspect.
Okay. All right. Now, what is the rationale for pegging the, no, it's okay, for pegging the exam fees in US dollars?
All right. So, Tinda, you'll find that the cycle that I've just described to you, it is solely funded by examination fees, like I said. And therefore, meaning that for the last, I think maybe let me use the last session as an example, because that would still be in the fresh of the minds of many people. You find that ZIMSEC struggles towards the end to finish uh, the examination cycle well, especially with the obligations of paying the examiners and paying the marking venues that had been used, because there was no funding left within our coffers, simply because we had collected examination fees last year in March, and we had collected them in Zimbabwe dollars, and we all know how the economy has been going.
Yes. But aren't
However,
you going
this
to face
year,
the same situation if people are going to be paying in Zim dollars still?
indeed, but this is a process, Tendai. I think your very first question was, what role do we play in ensuring, the child rights and protection? And these are things that we must consider to say, if we were to go full out and say pay in US dollars, how many people are getting that US dollars as a salary? How
Yeah.
many people would be able to pay that? I mean, it's realistic. You understand? It's realistic for us to say, yes, we do need the US dollars. That is true. ZIMSEC does need that US dollars to be able to run without a deficit and without disappointing all the stakeholders that come in, and as well as keeping the quality and integrity of the examination. However, we must, let us say, it's a process. So that is why, and you must realize that ZIMSEC does not uh, independently set examination fees. It's a process where we actually do apply for the examination fees, and they must be approved at cabinet level, and they must be approved through the Ministry of Finance. It must be approved by our parent ministry. So we can't wake up in the morning and just set an examination fee. It's a process that has a lot of stakeholder engagement.
All right.
So when we look at all that, when you look at all that, then we're saying that, look, at least if we can get it within a certain period of time and it holds a certain amount of value, then maybe we'll be able to cover uh, the obligations that are now. Because as we speak, we're already full blown. I think we're almost done, if we're not done already, with the grade 7 printing without funding. We're already having to start the ordinary printing, because we have deadlines and timelines that must be met in order for examinations to run. So we have to have started. So we already start on a minus. So when we are saying, okay, look, as if we get this amount of money, then the government subsidy will then come maybe a little bit later, which will try and cover, as we continue going. But look, there's no guarantee that we won't face the same problems. We are not economists, so we can't really comment on the way the economy is going, but we can only hope for the best.
Is the subsidy going to come in US dollars or in local currency?
If they've been gazetted in such a way that we are getting them in local currency, probably we're going to get it in local currency.
Okay. So, but at this stage, we aren't really sure yet.
I think the gazette that came with the approved fees stipulated that it's just a pegging. okay, and that examination fees are coming in Zimbabwe dollars. I can't firmly say what negotiations will happen. This is way above my pay grade and office in at the level of which negotiations of for such would be able to happen. So I don't want to tie myself down to an absolute no and absolute yes, because there are people above me who would probably deal with that issue.
All right, that's fair enough. I just want to talk about the spiraling Zim dollar. And by the time we reach 22 July, the salaries of the majority of parents will have eroded, and that excludes the majority of children from accessing accessing education. And we have noticed since 2020 that the number of candidates has been dwindling. Is this not a violation of the constitutional right to education?
When you look at examinations, Tinda, I think it's a bit different. I think it's a bit different in the sense that if we are looking at the decrease in candidature, we must also then correlate it to the number of students or children who are actually in school. Examinations don't just stand independently because a child must be in school in order to register. So, unfortunately, I don't think we have done adequate research to say what is the true reason for the drop in our candidature. Are these children at school and unable to write the exam? Or is it actually a drop in the children that are at school? It could be because COVID affected a lot of things in a lot of ways. So it's a bit difficult to talk about the decrease of candidature independent of looking at the school system and of obviously the social system. In terms of unavailability of funds, I think the government does have a program which is BEAM, okay, which is basically what when we were growing up we would call it an arm of the social welfare, where those who are underprivileged would be able to access education as well as examinations. So I do know, for instance, in the Midlands, Gokwe North and Gokwe South, all the primary schools are being covered under BEAM for both education as well as examinations. And this is not whether you are underprivileged, an orphan, or whether you're not, they are being covered. So I think there is a deliberate move to start, because we must start somewhere. There is a deliberate move towards access for all children to education and assessment, which has started, and we are seeing it working, and it is spreading very fast within the provinces.
I'm glad that you mentioned BEAM, because I just have it here that approximately 4 million children are in need of BEAM, the assistance, the government assistance, but only 160,782 managed to receive government assistance in 2021. So there is a discrepancy there. Though the facility is said to be available, how many people are actually, how many children are actually accessing it?
Like I said, that BEAM, by the time BEAM comes to system, and BEAM initiated from the statistics, the names of the children who are in need of assistance, through to their education office, through their district, through to the province, and finally through to the head office. So I would be misplaced to comment on that, because, like I said, by the time they come to us, it is as a result of them being in the school system.
Right. Okay. So you're the last point, like the last checkpoint, and a whole lot happens before they get to you. All right. Okay. So citizens are arguing that
Yeah.
even though the exam fees are payable in local currency, an equivalent of $11 is beyond the reach of most people. Is this not tantamount to making education the preserve of the rich? I mean, even though people can pay in Zim dollars, and you've still put the measure to the seven-day window, and you've frozen the rate, which are steps that you have been very considerate in taking. But still, if a child in O level is writing 10 subjects, that's $110, which a lot of people are making that as a monthly salary. It appears though that education is now for the rich, even for the people in public education, public schools.
Maybe we should go back a bit and look at how much parents were paying before the government subsidy came in. You will see that parents were paying 15 US dollars per subject at ordinary level and 26 US dollars per subject at A level. This was when there was no government subsidy. And then the government has stepped in and subsidized and actually reduced the amount of money that parents pay. Notwithstanding, please, it must be clear that I am not discounting the fact that there are a lot of parents who cannot afford it. I am a parent myself, so it would be unrealistic for me to sit here and say that we don't know how the struggling or the struggles. However, with the cycle that I have explained to you, Tendai, and to our listeners right now, I believe that we must look at the fairness of being able to supply a service and do it in such a way that as Zimbabwe, we can still give children qualifications that they are still able to use internationally and do it timelessly. We have tried to give the 2 months for parents to maybe try and raise the amount of money that is needed during that period. We're hoping that that 2 months period will assist in parents being able to save up, because registration for examinations will start in the coming week. So a parent will be able to register their child for the subject, so they will know to say, okay, if they're going to pay $700, for instance, or I mean 7 subjects, I beg your pardon. If they're going to pay for 7 subjects, which is $77, then they should be able to build up and work towards that. The interbank rate hasn't been going up as fast as the parallel market rate. So we're hoping that that will give us parents a bit of forecast to be able to say how much roughly should we look at saving towards that period.
So it's an issue of ZIMSEC making sacrifices to provide the service, and also asking parents to also make sacrifices on their end, because it's hard on anyone. Is that on everyone? Is that what you're saying? In this economy, the state of the economy is making it hard for everyone to deliver service and also to pay for the services.
I think the long and short of it is that, yeah.
All right. Okay. So now is the 7-day window adequate for payment of registration? Is that enough time for people? Is there a possibility to extend the due date to make sure that we increase the catchment and have many more students registering for exams?
Okay, so like I mentioned, registration is a separate process from payment. Although you cannot be a registered candidate at the end of the day if you haven't made payment. So registration is what happens at schools, where a child will go to the school and they will register with their school to say, okay, at advanced level, I'm doing maths, physics, chemistry, and biology, and that is the examination I would like to sit for. And then they are given their bill to say, okay, so you will be paying this amount of money in order to be able to pay that. I mean, to sit for that examination. So a child will know at A level, 4 subjects, I've got $88 that I need to raise. and then work towards raising that $88, which will be payable during that window period. So the payment period itself shouldn't affect anyone because people would already know roughly that they're supposed to pay this amount of money towards the examination fees. And look, we have to lock it down and close registration. That will be the end of July, which for our example, like, is late. If it was that we had not been affected by COVID-19 in the previous session, we would actually be writing June examinations right now, which means that it would be impossible for kids to have registered right now. They would have had to close registration all the way back in March in order for us to be able to successfully run the exam. So in order for us to be able to print adequate examination material and provide stationery, we need to close, Tendai. We cannot know that at Nkulumani High 1, there are 200 candidates, right? And we start printing. And then in October, we now have 250 candidates. Where will the 50 question papers come from? So that's why we close and firm up our figures so that we are able to do what we need to do.
Right. Okay. I just want to go back to the markers that you mentioned earlier on. As it's the 7th of June, the O&A markers. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Sorry, Tendai, you are breaking up very badly. Maybe you'll try and say that again.
Okay, so before we dropped there, I was just asking you, Nikki, about the markers for the O and A level, the past cycle of O and A level examinations. As at the 7th of June, they hadn't been paid, and this is 91 days after the completion of the job. Will markers payments also be pegged in US dollars? Or will they receive their dues at the February rate or at the interbank rate that you mentioned earlier on? That everything, the $11 mark is pegged around all these things.
7th of June was yesterday.
Yes, that was
okay, so I'm not sure which batch of examiners hasn't been paid because examiner payments were processed. However, notwithstanding, the question still stands in the sense that their payments have come late. They have come late. They did finish marking earlier on this year. However, I believe that I think it was a question was asked before, and I did advise that during the marking structures themselves, they do have a way of communicating with the leadership of ZIMSEC to be able to get that. I'm not sure if anyone from the examiners has taken that issue up because they are structures within the markers that allow them to speak to the ZIMSEC leadership on that note.
So this is up to them to fight for their own remuneration.
It is, and I'll tell you why, Tendai. In order for you to become a ZIMSEC marker or a ZIMSEC examiner, you actually make application. So like you applied for your job, I applied.
Oh, you don't nominate them?
No. We actually put an advert in the newspaper. and somebody comes and they apply, they go through training. If they are successful in the final assessment, then they qualify to become an examiner. They are then invited to come for marking, where they look at their contract, and they sign a contract with all the terms and conditions that are there. So their travel and subsistence, as well as their marking fee, the script rates, they are all inside of that contract. So being that they are literally a contract employee, and lobbying for your remuneration is your role as employee.
Okay.
I know we do see a lot of other organizations stepping into it. And I've always said that for something to be successful, you as the employee should come and raise your voice, because as ZIMSEC, if we have run out of money, when we are looking for funding to be able to stand for our examiners, let it be that it is coming from the examiners themselves. So it's a message coming from the employee. However, if the employee is quiet, but there is a lot of brouhaha, it makes it a bit difficult.
Okay, all right, because then you'd be addressing the public and not the employee particularly.
Yeah.
So they haven't been saying anything about their remuneration. They've been quiet. And also, just going back to what you said, that the payments were they processed in the office, and have the payments actually reached their bank accounts, or that is still suspended or pending?
Well, what happens is, I'm sure you understand with the banks, that once we do make bulk, because most of these are bulk payments. Remember,
Yes.
we are talking about thousands of examiners. Once we make out that bulk payment from our bank, the is between interbanks. If you have the same bank as ours, then obviously it's pretty fast and pretty instant. So maybe a day or two or three, I don't know, depending on the type of or the bank that you are using at that particular point in time. But we do have instances, for instance, where maybe a bank account was not properly captured or not properly given, where someone's payment may not necessarily go through at all. So in that case, again, as an employee, raise alarm and say, okay, I didn't get mine, so that somebody can pick it. Because if it's a bulk payment, for someone then to pick it will take some time.
Okay. All right. Now, just to wrap this up, we talked about the drop in the number of candidates over the last 2 years, all right, and a sharp increase. I say sharp, but it's only really because of the exchange rate in the exam fees. You mentioned that you really don't bear any responsibility on the drop in candidacy, but then what is ZIMSEC going to do to mitigate against the falling registration figures? Because you did say that you haven't done enough research about the correlation between candidacy and attendance to school. Are you going to do more research on that? Is there something, a paper you're going to write, something we can follow up on? Because this is very alarming that we have a whole generation of children who are dropping out of, it's really dropping out of school.
I think for ZIMSEC, it is disturbing in the sense that when we produce our statistics, particularly at a national level, as well as when we look at the number of candidates that we are able to produce for the industry, it is a concern to say, okay, well, we're not producing as many as we would like to, considering that our nation has always been known for its high literacy levels.
Yes.
Like I said, it's something that we as ZIMSEC, as well as the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education, need to look at, and maybe come up with, like you suggested, a paper as to what has been going on. Because now, for us to come up with all these suggestions, we'll be grappling in the dark. We do know that COVID-19, a lot of children have dropped out due to drug abuse, to pregnancy, some to relocation, some to being misplaced, some to being orphaned,
Yes.
unfortunately. So, that's why I said it's very difficult for us to pinpoint as to why there's a drop of candidature. But it is a very good suggestion that maybe we do need to firm our research and come up with a document or a paper, a research paper that kind of draws the picture of what is going on.
All right. Thank you very much, Nikki. I know you're on a round trip around Zimbabwe, doing a lot of work around this registration and that, but I really appreciate your time. Thank you for setting aside time for us. And a lot of people have been asking questions and they've been very concerned about the announcement that was made. So just a bit of clarity that we have received is enough. It's really sad that there isn't an extension, from the 22nd to the 29th. I feel like it would benefit just a few more families, just those remnants that would benefit those parents. And is it possible to just extend it by a few days?
Those are now policy issues, which are dealt with at a senior management level. And I think what happens is during the registration period, if you look at 2020, 2021, particularly 2021, we opened and closed and opened and closed registration for like 3 or 4 times because of that.
Okay.
But
You're
then we
trying
had
to just
a lot more time. So, yeah, so it's working hand in hand to say when we do realize that there is a need, we're not heartless. We do open and do set windows, but we do pray that parents will at least understand why we have to stick to these deadlines so that we neaten the exam process. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you very much. This brings us to the end of today's episode. Please join us once again next week. This is to our viewers. Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you very much, Tinda. Much appreciated.
Great. Enjoy the rest of your day.